Anyway, this is a comment about what Sergei Lavrov has said. He's the Russian foreign minister, held that post for many years. One of the oldest people in Putin's inner circle, because Lavrov was born in 1947. They say he's wanted to retire for some time. But anyway, speaking on Italian television, Lavrov was asked, well, how can you possibly maintain this preposterous claim that the Ukrainian government is a Nazi regime when President Volodymyr Zelensky is Jewish and under 1% of the Ukrainian population is Jewish? I mean, how likely is it, therefore, they would elect a Jewish president if they're such vicious anti-Semites? And he said, well, yeah, Zelensky's Jewish, but then so was Hitler. A lot of the most raving anti-Semites are, which is preposterous and bogus as well. So it's as well now to nail the lie that Adolf Hitler had any Jewish ancestry. Hello, Qasim. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So I remember reading about this in that Hubris and Nemesis book about Hitler. What Ian Kershaw's one. Okay, saying the story goes that Hitler's grandmother worked for a family called Frankenberger, who were Judaic, and they resided in Graz, Austria, when she became pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth. And the presumed father of her infant was her employer or the son of her employer, a Jewish family. But anyway, that has proven to be a complete canard. First of all, she never worked for any family with the surname Frankenberger. Second of all, there was no family by that name in Graz at the time. Third of all, Jewish people were not even permitted to reside in that province of Austria, Steiermark, for many years afterwards. So really every bit of that is false. Now, it's sort of an unfalsifiable claim. No, I can't prove that Hitler had no Jewish antecedents whatsoever, but there's no evidence that he did. So who were these vicious anti-Semites who were in fact Jewish themselves? I mean, well, I can think of one, John Amory, who was a quarter Jewish, but I think sure Lavrov hasn't heard of him. And there are these stories about Reinhard Heydrich, the butcher of Prague. But again, I don't think there's any hard evidence he had any Jewish ancestor or ancestress whatsoever. But I mean, I suppose someone's ethnicity is neither here nor there. I mean, no one should be mistreated on the grounds of ethnicity. It doesn't make people good or bad or anything like that. It was just yet another ludicrous defense for this patently absurd claim that the Ukrainian government is a Nazi regime. So he's managed to mortally offend most Jewish people and indeed the state of Israel. So Israel has had fairly cordial relations with Russia for years, despite the Russian Federation being the main armorer of Syria and various governments which are deeply hostile to Israel. Israel, yeah. And Russia's managed to play both sides of the street on that one. Putin always bigs up the Soviet heritage, but the Soviet Union was the arsenal of the Arab states against Israel. But since the 1980s, obviously, Soviet Jews were finally free to travel. Their human rights were recognized. Very few in the 70s made Aliyah, as in they emigrated and out of the USSR and into Israel. Obviously, 1991, the Soviet Union was over. Many Russian Jews left, and Jews left many other former Soviet countries, heading to Israel. And that's why something like 20% of people there have ancestry in the former USSR, and they were often Russian speaking, even if they weren't remotely ethnically Russian, or even if they didn't live in Russia, they lived in Kazakhstan or Belarus or wherever, or Armenia. They're more likely to speak Russian than the language of whatever that Union Republic was. And so they might identify culturally as Russians. Garry Kasparov, he's born in Baku to, I think it's an Armenian mother and a Jewish father, but he was acculturated as a Russian. Um, so anyway, Israel didn't want to hack off the Ruskies too much because they don't want them to be even more supportive of Syria. Maybe Dr. al-Assad is finally getting a grip on his country after 11 years, so detested 11 years on, despite massive foreign military support. He only controls half his country, but he might finally sort it out and then pose a threat to Israel. Obviously, Israel's armed to the teeth, a nuclear weapon state, so Syria can't really endanger them that much. But and there's a small Jewish community in Russia. They had good trade relations, sometimes intelligence cooperation. They didn't want to jeopardize that. But last month, Israel spoke out and said, you are committing war crimes in Ukraine, which is absolutely indisputable. The Geneva Convention and the Hague Conventions provides for you mustn't wantonly destroy civilian property. If for the purpose of a proper military action, you accidentally destroy it, fine. I mean, you might know you're going to destroy it, but that can't be the objective. I'm going to blow up this block of flats sheer out of spite, out of malice, blow up whatever it is, civilian infrastructure. If it's with the purpose of disrupting enemy munitions transport or something like that, that's completely acceptable. If you're blowing up a building because enemy soldiers are in there, yes, but you mustn't do so wantonly, just out of spite. Anyway, so Prime Minister Naftali Bennett of Israel, he has addressed down Putin. The Israelis have summoned the Russian ambassador to give him a tongue lashing, no doubt, but they've not gone so far as to say, well, now we're going to introduce sanctions and send arms to the Ukrainians. I don't think they will go that far, but that's something they could do if they were mortally offended again. So it shows how moronic and catastrophic this whole thing is for Russia. And Putin, what a calamity he's been for Russia. I know in the early days there were some successes. The economy got a lot better. And that's partly because lucky with the oil and gas prices, people started to get paid on time. There was no longer such rampant violent crime. Obviously, the state became the main criminal syndicate. And it was a bit more orderly. There's some major infrastructure projects. They managed to beef up the armed forces, but that was with a view to launching these wars of annexation. But obviously, it's gone badly now, and Russia still has some countries which are well disposed towards it. But people talk about North Koreanization being increasingly isolated, and people will buy less of their energy. And it was all avoidable. I mean, he's cost that country hundreds of billions of dollars, even though just the last 8 years, the effect of sanctions and the cost of fighting in Syria and in Ukraine. Wagner Group mercenaries in Libya, are they actually paid by the Libyan National Army? I don't know if the LNA has the oil revenues to pay them. So that might just be out of Russia's own pocket, or sending Wagner mercenaries to the Central African Republic of Mali. These are very underdeveloped countries. I don't know if they can afford to pay for these mercenaries. So it might be the Russian Federation paying for them. I mean, even the diamond concessions they get in return, I'm not sure that covers it. So yeah, it was just yet more imbecility and more rank dishonesty from the Kremlin, but that's what we've come to expect. Anyway, so thank you for watching my channel. Have more updates on the Ukrainian situation. And what else was I going to say? So yeah, book online lessons with me in history, politics, English language, English literature, English as a foreign language, religious studies, citizenship, politics, French. And I help people with dissertations, essays, elocution, theses, things like that, accent reduction. Yeah, so please subscribe to me and subscribe to my channel. Donate to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Toodaloo, everyone.